It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's another edition of Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. Yours truly here on the week of September the 4th, 2024. On this week's edition of the program, my man Steven Stumpf talked with the driver of the number 7 car, Mr. Justin Allgaier. We're going to dive into his interview and more right now. So without further ado, let's dive on in to Mr. Stumpf's interview with the veteran of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Mr. Justin Allgaier.
Now it's time for...
I feel like I had to win because Dale Jr.'s running Bristol, and we all know he's probably going to win that race after last year. So just cannot say thank you enough to this team, all these guys standing right here. The effort that's been put in has been incredible. We did not show up to Indianapolis 3 weeks ago like we wanted to, and these guys have worked tirelessly through this break. And cannot thank Meyer and Hellman's, everybody that's a part of this program, Brand Fashion Agriculture, Chevrolet, Hendrick Engine Shop. I mean, it's just... It's truly special. And when you're in Michigan, the manufacturer's backyard, these fans, I can hear them all chanting whenever we were sitting in the car on the red flag. But I hope whoever got turned over here is okay, and we'll go on and celebrate this one for a while.
Congratulations, Justin Allgaier winning at Michigan.
To go into the Inferno with Bryan.
Okay, so I'm Steven Stumpf. Nice to meet you, Justin, this weekend. So I wanted to talk about you. 2 weeks ago you won in Michigan, had a 50-point day Daytona. You're now the points leader by 33 points. Just, how much of a testament, how, great is the 17 firing on cylinders considering, just the bad breaks and the, missed opportunities at the start of the year?
Yeah, I think the beginning of the year was probably the hardest part for me because while we had speed and we were doing all the right things, we had stage wins, it seemed like everything was going in the right direction. We just didn't have the finishes to show for it. I mean, I look at, I think somebody said in the first 24 races, we had 17 races that had something happen, right? Whether it was a penalty or crash or damage or, just not being there at the end of the race when we had such a fast race car. And I think that's been disappointing. The break for us after Indy before Michigan was probably the best thing that ever happened, right? It let us kind of recenter, get ourselves back to where we needed to be at, and really put ourselves in good position for, this playoff run, kind of, getting into the season. And these last 2 races have just been phenomenal. I mean, to win at Michigan was great, but then to race like we did in Daytona, obviously the end of the race we only got back at 7th, but still it was a solid night for us. And like you said, we took the point lead by a pretty good margin. Now, with that, it can all go away just as equally as fast, just like it did last week for Cole. So, never are we going to be settled or comfortable, but we're pretty proud of what we've been able to accomplish over these last 6 weeks or so.
Second year of Jim Coleman, 6 wins so far. How is the chemistry? How has your guys' relationship kind of changed in year 2 compared to year 1?
Well, I think year 1 was interesting because we things just kind of worked, and Jim and I have a great relationship off the racetrack, and just adding him to this group has been a great addition to not only myself but to Junior Motorsports as a whole. 2024 though, every time we feel like we're doing all the right things, it just seems to go against the two of us, and that can be hard on, as much as it can be hard on you mentally, it can be hard on you physically, it can be hard on you just relationship-wise, so we've had to really do a good job of making sure that we come up with a plan, we stick to a plan, and we execute, and that's probably the most important piece of it, and we've done a lot better job of that over the last 5-6 weeks, and I feel like we're probably closer today than we were even a year ago or 2 years ago when he started.
And then the big news this week was the new schedule announcements for next year. I'm probably the most excited you're probably the most excited for Gateway, your home track. I think at Darlington you talked about how that 2010 race, just narrowly missing out, stuck with you. So how was it mean to have that race back on the schedule?
It was huge. I mean, I love the racetrack at Worldwide Technology Raceway. I feel like it's a cool place. It races well. We've seen some amazing races, not only with the Cup Series, but for the Truck Series for the last number of years. But then you watch the IndyCar race, you watch the Supercar race there. It's pretty awesome. So, selfishly being home, I really wanted that one back on the schedule. But I think it's gotten back on the schedule because of the ability to race well and to do all the right things. You know, when I look at the 2025 schedule, I have some good and some bad. You know, we definitely are sad at some of the racetracks that are not on the schedule for the Xfinity Series. And I think that's going to be difficult. Got some great additions to the schedule. So, you know, with change comes reservation, and I think all of us are interested to see what 2025 looks like. But I think as race fans and as drivers and as teams, we get so caught up in status quo of like what we've done year over year over year over year. And I think sometimes change can be unknowing, right? Like we're trying to figure that out. So I think it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, but all is going to be good.
Also, you know, big news that series will be back in Mexico City next year. How important is it for this series to be in front of such a new audience, new international audience? And what was your time like racing in Montreal, and especially winning there? Yeah,
I mean, selfishly, I would have loved to have had Montreal back on the schedule just because that was a really cool event and a lot of fun, and obviously got to win there, so that was really, really neat. You know, but I think internationally, you know, I didn't get to go to Mexico. You know, I was coming in about the same time that Mexico was going out, and so, you know, I never had that opportunity. So I don't know what to expect, but I do know that, you know, we have such a great fan base, not only here in the United States, but internationally as well. And, you know, I think it's we've seen it with others taking ball sports, playing in other countries, and you know, obviously as NASCAR, we've had some time in other countries that we've been able to go and run. So I'm interested to see how it's perceived, how you know, good of an opportunity we have down there. But you know, they had a lot of success down there in the past. I feel like, you know, if we can go down there and put on a good show and everything goes well, it should be a lot of fun.
And then Rockingham also back the first time since 2004, second Bristol race, which I know you're excited about. But as you said, all 4 tracks that got taken off, you won at all of them. So how disappointing is that in that regard?
I mean, yeah. I mean, at the point you win at the tracks that are off the schedule, it's ultra difficult, right? I mean, I think for me, you know, you go to these racetracks, and like I said, as a sport, we so kind of accustomed to where we go and what we see, and you know, we have friends and people and fans that we are accustomed to seeing at those racetracks. So you know, that's going to be difficult, but at the same time, you know, we'll keep digging. And you know, I think Rockingham, I got to run an ARCA race there, so that's really cool. Got some experience there. Looking forward to that one. 2 Bristols is probably the biggest one is that I'm excited about. But you know, at the end of the day, to get something, you have to give something, and I think that unless we want to have 50 races on the schedule, you know, this is kind of the inevitable side of it. So, you know, we'll manage it the best we can, but at the end of the day, you know, we just want to make sure that the fans are getting the best product from the racetrack we can, and that's not always easy to do. And I think sometimes it takes a little bit of change to realize what you need to do for the best effort.
And then at JRM, there's a bunch of young, talented drivers coming up. Connor Zillage full-time next year. Carson Quappoles impressed his limited starts. What have you seen out of those two, you know, between, you know, interacting with them and racing them on the track? Yeah,
I mean, obviously Carson has performed at a level that I don't think anybody ever expected to come in and to just jump in and go. You know, very first race, he was right up to speed. And you know, the thing that I love about Carson is, you know, he comes from the late model shop. He's got, you know, covered in grease and dirt from thrashing, you know, on the late models, and comes and works in the Xfinity shop and you know, helps get the cars ready to go, and goes back to the late model shop and works again, and just his work ethic is really, really good, and somebody that I think has a long longevity in this sport if he can keep that same work ethic. Obviously ultra talented. He's proven that late models. He's obviously proven it in his limited starts in the Xfinity Series. So I'm excited to see what the future looks like for him. You know, Connor is arguably the most talked about young driver coming up. You know, what he's been able to accomplish on all the racing that he's done is really impressive. I think he's won, 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 4 4 out of 5 ARC races, and got the Daytona 24 hours and the Sebring 12 hours, and you know, heck, anything he jumps in, he seems like he's up at the front. So, you know, I'll be interested to see him get behind the wheel, and then obviously getting full-time next year and being able to run next year. You know, I'm excited to see what that looks like. good kid. I've gotten to work out with him quite a bit. We worked out together at Chevrolet quite a bit last year, and got to know him. And what I learned is I don't want to foot race Connor. He's probably one of the fastest runners I've ever seen in my entire life. But he's definitely used to being fast and pretty good at it.
The last question I got for you is you signed a 1-year contract with JRM last year at Bristol after winning Bristol. Is the expectation to be back in 2025, or is that something you guys will focus on later?
Yeah, I mean, the expectation is to be back. We're working through everything right now. Obviously, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that have to be put in place to make sure that everything goes in the right direction. But that is the plan as of this moment, and we're working through that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Once again, that was Steven Stumpf's interview with Mr. Allgaier. Let's dive on into the latest news and notes with what is still hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
All right, I'm going to bring in to the program. He is our content director for NASCAR on the site we call Front Stretch, frontstretch.com, at Steven_Stumpf, Mr. Steven Stumpf himself. Steven, you were in Darlington, and you got to witness once again a first win of the season to lock himself into the playoffs, that being Chase Briscoe. First and foremost, thank you so much for coming on the program. And then in 60 seconds or less, describe what we saw at Darlington.
Thank you for having me on. It's always great to be here. And I mean, what we saw was an incredible race. There's no other way to put it. Looked like Larson just had the field on lock. He led 263 laps, which is the most laps anyone has ever led in this car. But Briscoe stayed with him the entire night, and then just quietly got better and better as the night went on. And once those late restarts came, Chase Briscoe made that 3-way pass, and it was lights out from there. Just a huge win for him. Probably the best race of his career. Great send-off win for SHR. They're not done yet. They still have 10 races to go. And I think it's surprising because I made a list of like the drivers who could potentially win from outside the playoffs, and I did not even think about putting Chase Briscoe on it. So incredible job by them. And yeah, again, it was just I think it was just incredible race, especially with that and the regular season title coming down to the wire.
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, him and Busch battling it out. You had Buescher as well with Bubba, and then they both get into unfortunate events down the road. I mean, it was just back and forth and back and forth. I mean, it was fantastic every single which way. Steven, let's dive on in. Media day for the NASCAR Cup Series. Playoff drivers were today. Some big names talked, and I want to first start out with Denny Hamlin. He was talking to the reporters, and they asked, how close is the charter deal? And he said stagnant. And once he was asked about the charter deal, his mood turned sour very, very fast. And he kind of snapped back at reporters saying it's not even close, and who's telling you that? And when the reporters said NASCAR, Hamlin replied something along the lines of course they say that. That's what they're supposed to say. Is there cause for concern? I mean, I keep asking the same question every other month, but I'm going to keep asking until if they get a deal done. How much of a concern is this that there's not a deal done yet?
I'm not too concerned that there's not a deal done yet, but I am somewhat concerned that it seems like there's still no progress being made. I think, at least in my mind, I thought once they announced Mexico City, once they announced all the schedules, that was kind of my impression, was that, okay, they put their differences aside. They're very close to a deal if they're ready to announce a schedule. Because I feel like that's something that wouldn't be done if, the uncertainty of all the teams racing was, still in the air. But evidently, that's not the case. I don't know what it will take to bridge the gap. I don't know when it will happen, but it's definitely not looking good for it to be, this stagnant. At the start of September and with only 10 weekends to go.
Another notable thing that we heard was Martin Truex Jr. talking with the media, and he announced that he will drive either the number 56 car or the number 78 car next year in the Daytona 500. But his crew chief is going to be a little bit of reuniting of some sort. Cole Pern, he said that is going to be a top of the box one last time with him. A little bit of a reunion to potentially end the career of Martin Truex Jr. I didn't see this one coming, Steven.
Neither did I. And if you follow Cole Pern's Twitter account, he's basically gone for several years. Then he came back and had a tweet about something I probably shouldn't say on the podcast here. but you know, I think it's a great thing that happened. I don't know if next year's Daytona 500 will be Truex's last Cup start, but it's really awesome to see just knowing how much success they had together between 2015 and 2019. That Cole Pern will be back and that Truex will have one more race with him on the box. I think it'll be very fun, especially when Truex is still, looking for that first 500 win.
Last but not least, Alex Bowman addressed rumors that he will not be driving the number 48 car in 2025. He says that as far as he knows, he will be driving it, but he did say that the rumors that he's been hearing over the past month have been annoying. I feel like this keeps coming up, and then it slowly decreased once he won at Chicago, and then once he started slipping, and like we have seen in the past month, it definitely rose in heat up a little bit hotter in the past month. Is there cause for concern for Bowman fans?
See, it's a tough one because, it feels like there's been uncertainty with that seat for well before this year too. And in my personal opinion, I thought, once he won Chicago, once he made the playoffs, I thought the rumors were done, especially since he has a contract through 2026. He has two more years. So I am somewhat surprised to see these rumors pop back up. But for now, I just kind of given the circumstances, I think for now, probably I don't think there's too much for concern unless, there's even more smoke and stuff that gets, announced or rumors that pop up in the upcoming weeks.
It's going to be fun to hear about all the latest news, notes, rumblings. Oh, could it be Kyle Busch? Could it be this driver? Could it be that driver? I mean, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but it's not going to be Kyle Busch. I'm going to leave it at that. Steven, let's dive on into our soundbite of the week where we hear from an interview that you conducted in Darlington with Mr. Corey LaJoie.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Corey LaJoie comes home 9th in the Southern 500. Corey, just talk about your day. Talk about kind of those last 50 laps where it seemed like everything kind of went insane.
Yeah, I mean, you expect that, right? Precautions. There was a lot of green flag runs. And we worked hard to kind of stay on the lead lap pretty much all night. We had a long stop under green, but the pit guys were great up until that. We had a hose get stuck into the splitter, and we lost the lap because of that. Took a wave, got back on the lead lap, and then we were kind of on a tire advantage cycle there towards the end, and a couple guys crashed, and we missed it and drove back towards the front.
And with this being your first top 10 on a non-drafting track in the Cup Series, just how important is this day, especially in one of NASCAR's biggest races, and also to trying to look forward to next year as well?
I mean, I go with the intention to do this every week. We've been in plenty of spots in the top 10 at late. I mean, Nashville's one where we got a crash in the third, so but to actually put one in the notch is nice at the hardest track that we go to in the longest race. So there's a lot of people chirping, but nonetheless, I'm gonna get paid for that place tonight, and my phone's gonna keep ringing when people want me to drive their cars.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah.
Once again, that was Mr. Corey LaJoie. Steven, much needed. And I think I was listening to the teardown. Jeff Gluck said that Ryan Sparks, one of his goals was to get Corey LaJoie top 10 on a non-super speedway track. And on Sunday night, he can check that one off of his bucket list because he got it done.
Yep. ninth place finish for that team. Great result. Especially great result, especially considering the number of times that Corey's been in the news recently, especially, and especially it's, a good result for him given that it looked like he was going to be in the 7 next year, but especially, and he had the contract, but is going to be just forced out. So, and, about the race itself, I don't remember exactly where he's running before kind of those late cautions happened at the end, but, that provided the opportunity for them. They perfected the strategy really well, and they drove to a 9th place finish. So hats off to Corey, hats off to that team for getting it done at Darlington last weekend. And still don't know exactly where Corey will be next year, or in what series or in what capacity. But based on his response, he definitely either he has something lined up potentially, or he feels pretty confident that he will eventually have something.
Let's dive on into some final thoughts where we wrap it up with the checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts are in the air. Whatever you want to rant, rave, or anything in between. Steven Stumpf, the floor is yours, my friend.
First of all, I just want to say that Tyler Reddick is a damn good race car driver. He was under the weather. He said he was feeling under the weather the entire week before the Southern 500. And then he gets in the car in the Southern 500, and it's the word. I won't go into details about what exactly he was feeling, but basically that was the worst he felt, it basically in the car ever. And yet, despite that, even with Larson dominating the race, winning both stage and finishing 4th, Reddick has a good enough car and a good enough race to just barely hold on to that regular season title by 1 point. It's something to keep in mind. Especially, if Larson misses by 5, less than 5, or Reddick advances by more than 5, that's going to be very consequential there. And again, Reddick's really had his breakout year. He leads the series in average finish. He leads the series in top 10s. I believe he's tied for the most top 5s. And I think this Darlington performance is kind of the exclamation point on what's been a terrific 26 races so far. I mean, in that race, he put his blood, sweat, tears, and he fought through other bodily functions I probably can't to get the job. So very impressive performance from him.
Obviously, Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher not making it is very, very disappointing. For Bubba Wallace not to make it is absolutely unacceptable. His teammate in Tyler Reddick wins the regular season championship, has won a couple of races, a few actually. And for Bubba Wallace to not even win, let alone miss the playoff, unacceptable. Sure, he's got a ride. He's got all the sponsors. He has the popularity. But he's got to start delivering. Sure, he will not lose his job this year. Next year, though, it's going to be a make or break season. For Bubba Wallace, he's got 10 races. Obviously, it did not go well this past month. Past 6 races have been fairly solid, but before that past month was absolutely terrible. For Bubba Wallace, he's got to get into victory lane sooner rather than later, or within the next couple of years, he could be out of a job and trying to be into a race car sooner rather than later. For Bubba Wallace, disappointment. Hopefully that leads to more motivation and more up-and-coming results in the years to come.
Something I'll add there is, it's kind of frustrating just because we've seen Bubba, how good Bubba can be, flashes we've seen out of that team, and it's like they just really had a poor, I think, April to stretch that really kind of took them out of the running. Then they finally right the ship the last 7-8 weeks or so. Like, if he doesn't get wrecked at Michigan, I'd say he potentially goes on to win the race, especially given how that Reddick ended up winning himself and that Bubba finished second at Michigan back in 2022. So it's like, all the stuff is there. It's just a matter of, just putting, not necessarily even winning, but just putting all that together for the 26 races to make it into the playoffs. I do agree, though, that, I think it's almost going to be 2 years since his last win, but I think everything is there. It's just a matter. As usual. It's just a matter of executing.
I completely agree, and it'll be interesting to see what happens coming up this weekend in Atlanta for Bubba Wallace and that number 23 team. You know what else is going to be fun to watch? All of our content on frontstretch.com. Steven, where are you going to be cooking up on the interwebs, and then where can we find you on social media, my friend?
I'm Steven_Stumpf. That is Steven with an STEPHEN. No, it's an easy thing to mix up. But also, along with my Allgaier interview, I do my weekly stat sheet and forward burning questions columns. And also, the last 2 weeks, I've started a brand new column that's going to be coming out Friday night. It is called the Weekend Primer. And if you don't know what that is, essentially, it's going to be like a recap of all the important information you need to know heading into the race. Each weekend, so for example, last week heading into Darlington, I listed the regular season standings. I listed the number of playoff points each driver had. I listed the playoff cut line. I gave some kind of fun facts from the previous week, like kind of the statistics surrounding Burton's incredible upset at Daytona. Also, had recent news, things to look forward to next year, like the schedule. Eckes going to Colleague next year. Likewise, Brandon Jones going back to JGR. That will definitely be mentioned in the weekend primer this weekend. So I think it turned out really well last weekend. I think definitely for all the people out there who want to tune into more races, I think it's a very useful tool to kind of get up to speed each weekend. So I'm very excited to be writing it now, and hope you guys will be able to check it out more.
I know I'm going to be checking it out when I'm going to be in the air. I'll buy some Wi-Fi courtesy of Mr. Tom Bowles, and I'll definitely read on my way to the ATL, which is a good segue to find all of our content. Mr. Michael Massey and yours truly going to be heading to the ATL. First ever time for me going to Atlanta Motor Speedway, so I'm totally excited to check that one off of my bucket list. And it's going to be a fun weekend. The first race of the playoffs, and then you got, I think, 3 races left before the playoffs start for the Xfinity Series. So it's going to be absolutely crazy. Unpredictability is finest. And then remember last time we went to Atlanta, closest finish, 3 wide, Suarez, Blaney, Busch, just that little bit, Kyle Busch did not make the playoffs because of that. Will we see something like that on Sunday? Got to tune in to find out. Next week on the program, I don't even think Steven knows this. This is going to be really, really fun. On behalf of Moneyline, Tyler Reddick, he's going to be joining the program. So I know it's going to be really, really fun to talk with Reddick about the regular season championship and so much more. So stay tuned for that conversation next week on Bringing the Heat. Coming up on the Front Stretch Podcast Network, Through the Gears, my man Tino's got all the latest betting odds, and then you got Stock Car Scoop, and then NASCAR Happy Hour. It's going to be fun for Mr. Steven Stumpf, Trey Lyles, and everybody associated with Front Stretch. I am Brian Timothy Dono. Thank you so much for joining us. Talk with you next week here on Bringing the Heat.
What's up? Michael Massey here, frontstretch.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.